If you're looking for a way to make your 2019 to 2023 Ranger look more aggressive, or maybe just fit some larger wheels and tires, and you don't want to spend a ton of money or time on it, then Rough Country's 2.5-inch front leveling kit will be just the thing to get you there. Just a quick note on fitment here, this kit will fit all 2019 to 2023 Rangers, excluding Tremor models. Most trucks come from the factory sitting a bit lower down in the front than they do in the rear, and that is referred to as rake. A leveling kit like this one is going to correct that rake and get the truck to sit much more even front to rear. The other effects of adding a leveling kit are the additional ground clearance and of course the ability to fit larger wheels and tires. With this leveling kit installed, you can fit 31-inch tires on your truck without the need for trimming or other modifications. Now in some instances 32s will fit, but that's going to depend a lot more on your wheel specs, so for simplicity's sake we recommend sticking with 31s. Now at its core, this is a set of spacers that is effectively extending the length of your front struts. So it's going to make them physically longer, giving you that 2.5 inches of extra height in the front end. Now these are only going to measure about 1.5 inches in actual height, but it's important to remember that because of geometry, spacers are not a 1-to-1 ratio in height for the front end. These are going to bolt right on top of your struts, and they won't require you to mess with the spring compressor or do any disassembly of the struts themselves, so installation is pretty straightforward. And since you're keeping your stock springs and shocks completely intact, your truck is going to ride pretty much the same as it did previously. It might be a little bit more stiff just because of course you're extending some things, but it's not too much height where it's going to become a problem. The spacers are made from a heavy-duty composite material, so these are strong and they're lightweight. They're also one piece, and since they're not made of metal or aluminum or anything like that, they're not gonna rust or corrode, so you don't have to worry about that becoming a problem later on down the line. They also come with all the studs and hardware that you need to get them installed as well, so it's gonna make installation go that much quicker. Pricing comes in at about $75, making them a really affordable option, especially considering how much extra height these actually give you. This is about the most cost-effective way to get any kind of lift or level on your truck. Now, I am a big fan of anything that makes an aesthetic and functional improvement for under $100, and this kit surely fits the bill. Installation gets a 2 out of 3 on our difficulty meter, and the job should take you around 3 hours to complete. Now I know I said this is going to be pretty simple because, well, it is. It's just going to require you to move some bits out of the wheel to gain access to the front struts, and you'll have to take those out. Overall, it's not a hard process, just one that's going to require some patience and some time. Just remember too, once you've got everything bolted back together, you should plan on getting an alignment done as soon as you can, because you are changing around that suspension geometry and you want your truck to ride and handle the way it was supposed to. So with that, let's head on out to the install bay and we're going to walk you through this process step by step.
Tools required for this install include a couple different size impact guns, a hammer, a marker, a 15mm ratcheting wrench, a 21mm wrench, a swivel adapter, 15, 18, and 24mm sockets, a pry bar, and some floor jacks. What's up guys? Today we're installing a leveling kit on our Ranger, so let's get started. So to remove our factory strut, I'm going to be doing this the easy way. We're going to remove our 2 bolts on the lower control arm pivot points. That way we can swing the lower control arm down. We do have studs on the bottom of our strut that go down into the lower control arm, so you're not going to get enough clearance to get it out, or more importantly, get the longer one back in by just disconnecting the upper control arm ball joint. So now the first thing I'm going to do is mark our alignment bolts here. Now, since you're raising up the truck, you're changing your suspension geometry and you're gonna have to get it in alignment anyway. That's why I'm just disconnecting it from here. When we get our new strut in, we're just gonna wanna put it back just good enough to get to the alignment shop, which I think just doing where it was at before we lifted it is gonna be good enough. So right on that center point, I'm just gonna make a mark with my marker, and then I'm gonna make a mark down here as well, so I can get that lined up. Then I'm gonna do it on this side as well. You really only need to do it on one side, but I like to do it on both, just to be safe. So now if you're good with your mark on just one side of each bolt, you can continue. I'm just gonna put one on the opposite side as well. So now we're gonna remove our 2 bolts. I'm using a 24mm socket on the nut side and a 21mm wrench on the bolt side. And now you can take your plates off. You're gonna have to rotate this one to get some clearance to get it out. Now rotate that so the flat side's by your skid plate, so you can slide that out. Now this one's not wanting to come out, so I'm gonna thread that nut back on a few threads. And then just take a hammer and tap it out. Move the nut and wiggle that the rest of the way out. Now while we're down here, we'll take an 18mm socket to remove these two nuts. Work on wiggling our lower control arm down, get it off the strut. And now we'll go up top. So now we'll go up top with a 15mm ratcheting wrench and remove our 3 nuts. I'm gonna leave this front one on a couple threads while I remove the back 2 so this doesn't fall out. Now I'm running out of room for my ratcheting wrench, so I'm gonna get a 15mm socket on a ratchet. Now with the back 2 out, we can lift up on the strut and remove that last nut and then remove our strut. You're gonna have to swing your lower control arm out of the way, and then you can slide that down between your tie rod and your axle. Once you're done with this side, do the same thing on the other. So now with our factory strut removed, we can start assembling our spacer. Before we do that, we are gonna have to knock out this pin on the top of our strut. So you can just take a socket or something, give it a few taps just to knock it out of place, and then you can wiggle it out. Now once you have that popped out, we can start assembling our spacer. We've got 3 bolts. There's a hex cut out in the bottom of this. So we're just gonna slide these through, line them up, and then I'm just gonna flip it over and press it against the table to get it to push into that slot. So now I'm just gonna do this one at a time. So flip it over, line up that hex cut out, and then just flip it over, press it against the table so that it's nice and flush in there. Do that 2 more times. And now with our spacer assembled, we're just gonna slide this onto our strut. We're gonna take our factory nuts and thread those onto our strut. And then we'll take a 15mm socket, tighten these down, and then you can repeat the same process for your other strut. So now we're gonna slide our strut into the upper mount. We have 3 nuts included in the kit that we're gonna be threading onto these studs. You might need to push your lower control arm towards the rear of the truck to get enough clearance to get this in. And now you can start threading your nuts up top. I'm just making these hand tight because we do still want to be able to move this strut around a little bit to get it into our lower mount. So now we're gonna raise our lower control arm up to connect our strut. So line up your 2 holes and then just start wiggling this back and forth. And then you can thread on your nuts. And we'll just leave those loose for now. So now I lowered the truck back down pretty close to the ground here. I've got my floor jack that I'm gonna use to jack up the lower control arm to get it back into the pivot points. Now you're gonna wanna do the one that's towards the front of the truck first. If you do the one towards the rear first, this one's gonna pop out too far and you're not gonna have the leverage to move it in. By doing that first one, it's gonna pull this side in so that you can use a pry bar to pry out on it to get that side in. So I'm gonna start jacking up on this until we get it into the pivot point. We might need a second jack on the other side to even it out as it goes up, but we'll cross that bridge if we need to. Now I've stuck a pry bar in the bolt slot for the other side lower control arm pivot point. I've got it going in front of the strut, and that's gonna allow me to pry back on this to line my hole up. I'm gonna pull on that while I jack this up. And now once you've got your hole lined up, you slide your bolt through. And we'll just put that as far as we can for now while we work on the other side. So now we're over on the other side and we're pretty close. So I've got my second jack. I'm just gonna jack up on that. My jack's sliding a little bit from the angle of the lower control arm, so I'm just gonna move it back. Get my hole lined up and then thread my bolt through. And now we can raise this back up in the air, get our hardware on the other side of those bolts, and tighten it down. So now we're back under our lower control arm. We're gonna reinstall our hardware there. First, we're gonna tighten down our lower strut nuts. Grab an 18mm socket to do that. And then we can install our alignment plate and our nut. Now you wanna match the alignment plate orientation on this side. So the flat part is facing out. So we're just gonna flip this around and put it on just like that on the other side. And then thread your nut on. And now we're gonna do that same thing over here. It's facing that way. We're just gonna flip it around and match that on this side. And then thread your nut on. Now on this side, our plate's not sitting in between these two like it is on this side. So I'm gonna grab a 21mm wrench to just rotate that bolt around. And now it's sitting in there just like we want it. So now grab your 24mm socket for your nut side and your 21mm wrench on your bolt side. Use that 21mm wrench to turn that bolt and line it up with the mark that you made earlier. And then tighten that down. And then do that same thing on this side and tighten that down. Now, last thing we need to do is go up top and tighten down our nuts. So I'm gonna thread all of these the rest of the way on first. And then I'll tighten them down with a 15mm ratcheting wrench. And now once you've got all that done on this side, do the same thing on the other side. So that'll wrap up this review and install of the Rough Country 2.5-inch front leveling kit for your 2019 to 23 Ranger, excluding Tremor. Thank you for watching, and for all things Ranger, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.